Earlier this week, the Senate passing the Genius Act, the first federal framework for stablecoins. Joining us right now in an exclusive interview, I keep calling her the OG. She really is one of them. Haun, founder and CEO of Haun Ventures. She was previously on the board of Facebook's stablecoin project and former board member of Coinbase when the company launched USDC. Good morning, Katie. It's been a long time. How are you?
Good morning. It has been a long time. I'm doing well. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm great, thanks. In terms of the Genius Act and what comes next, obviously the House is what comes next. But where do you see the fault lines in all of this? And to the extent it changes the stablecoin world, you know, we have Circle just went public, obviously. What does the stablecoin world look like to you a year or two out after all of this?
Well, it looks much bigger. Not just after the Genius Act, it was already growing. And, you know, I debated Paul Krugman, the economist, in 2018 on stablecoins, and you can go watch it on YouTube. And I said then this made a lot of sense. And just because a wise person told me, just because something's inevitable doesn't mean it is imminent. And indeed, while many people have been declaring the blockchain and digital asset space dead over the last few years, we have been investing into stablecoin infrastructure, stablecoin applications. And I think what we've seen, Andrew, is just tremendous growth. Let me give you three statistics that I know you had Jeremy and Circle, a lot of buzz there, but let me give your viewers three stats on stablecoins, something that didn't even exist, you know, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. $250 billion of supply. And that's up so much year over year. I mean, the growth has been really exponential. You're talking about just over a year ago, $100 billion of stablecoin supply. So it's really growing very rapidly, and we think that growth will continue, particularly with the advent of the Genius Act. But it's not just that. Another statistic that I think people are surprised to learn about stablecoins is stablecoin transaction volume for the first time eclipsed the transaction volume of Visa last year. I'm not sure if you knew that. And then the third thing about stablecoins is they're now the 14th largest holder in the world of U.S. Treasuries, having surpassed the economies of Germany and Norway as the largest holders.
So, Katie, but that raises to me a whole other question, and I think one that's worth delving into, which is, to the extent there are risks in our economy and in our system, what is the chance that the stablecoin universe is upended in some way that we don't understand? Because either there are not enough treasuries that are backing the stablecoins, and a player is not as compliant as you want them to be. That's on one end of it. The other end of it is, if you have the concentration that we're talking about of one company or a group of companies owning so many treasuries to try to back the stablecoins, how should we think about that?
Yeah. Well, when I'm talking about stablecoins, Andrew, also let me be really clear. I'm really talking about fiat-backed, one-to-one, dollar-backed, or fiat currency-backed stablecoins. I'm not talking about algorithmic-backed stablecoins, although a really interesting idea. We did see some spectacular failures in that area not too long ago. So what I'm talking about are fiat-backed. And in many ways, I think one of the really great things about stablecoins, fiat-backed, particularly with this legislation, is, you know, for every one USDC that Circle issues, there is $1 in a, for example, JP Morgan bank account. And we all woke up to the limitations of the fractional reserve banking system with Silicon Valley Bank. So this is fully reserved. And I think that's important. But you mentioned the Genius Act, and I think let's come right back to that, because I think the space you called me an OG. I've been in the space for 10 years. One of the things I've been saying since I first came on your show, I've been asking for regulatory clarity and more rules of the road. And I think the Genius Act is exactly that. And I think, you know, if you're talking about risks, let's get some legislation in. So that's why I think it was really exciting that Senate Democrats and Senate Republicans came together to pass this historic bill. But may I say, I think the really transformational crypto framework is also the market structure bill. And I know there's been a lot of talk of both. Of course, the question that has stymied kind of courts and crypto founders is, what's a security, what's a commodity, who's going to regulate those? And there's a perfect opportunity for the Senate and the House to also get that bill. And I think we saw 70 House Democrats last year join in support of a bill like that. So let's get both passed. And I think that's really, yeah.
Katie, what do you make of just, the reason I was focused on just the risks in the system, because actually now as this business is really growing, we were speaking to the CEO of Tether before. Obviously, people have been demanding more transparency from that company, for example, for a long time. Where are the risks in the system, to the extent there are some that we should be thinking and concerned about, if at all?
Well, look, I think some of the risks exist in the same banking system, right? Let's have audits. If you talk about USDC, which is a large stable coin, after Tether, it's the second largest market cap. I mean, you're talking about two issuers, Coinbase and Circle. Those are public companies. They're audited by Big Four accounting firms. So let's see, and if companies are going to stay private, let's see the audits happen every year. And I think, I'm not sure about Tether, but I do believe they have a board. Do they have an audit and risk committee? I'm not sure. You have to, when you have follow on next time, you'll have to ask those questions. And those are the questions I would be asking. But I know with respect to USDC, I've been familiar with Circle and with Coinbase for a long time. And, when I served on the board of Coinbase, I saw those audit reports, and I saw the procedures and processes in place. And again, I think that's where not all stable coins, and not all stable coins are created equal. I can really speak mostly to USDC given my history and experience, but there are other great stable coins out there. And I know that others are in the works too. Paxos has one also, for example. And we'll see others emerge, I suspect. A lot of people talk about the market opportunity, Andrew, of just yours. But as I mentioned, there's the orchestration layer, also plays an important role. Kind of think of it as Grand Central Station, the rails. That's a really important piece of this all too. And what kind of companies are those? I mean, we saw Stripe just acquire Bridge for $1 billion. And Bridge is not the only game in town, right? We also have, for example, BVNK. That's another orchestrator for the stablecoin space. And I think the reason that you're seeing a lot of new entrants is because the market opportunity is so big.
Hey, Katie, I know just enough to be dangerous about stuff like this. So this might be a stupid question, but if a couple of times you said, hey, it's based on fiat. If you say that to like someone who's orange pilled, it's like, based on fiat. It's like, that's the whole rationale for Bitcoin. So what can we do to make a stable coin based on Bitcoin, or Bitcoin eventually become analogous to what a stable coin is if it finally gets to a point where it just has a very stable, does that ever happen as we get closer to, I don't know.
I think, look, Joe, I'm glad you brought up, I think you're talking about Bitcoin, and I'm glad you brought up Bitcoin. We're obviously also long Bitcoin, and I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. In fact, zooming out, Bitcoin is the granddaddy of them all. This is what launched Satoshi's white paper. If you read it from 2008, it called for an electronic peer-to-peer payment network. So really, stable coins are kind of the original vision of Satoshi. Now, Joe, as you mentioned, there's been a lot of volatility historically in Bitcoin. And, think about gold. People forget gold lost 30% of its value in the 1970s. I mean, there's no denying that Bitcoin has been volatile. But let me tell you an interesting statistic about Bitcoin that your viewers might or might not know. We're still so early, and by the way, we're still so early in the stablecoin space. Although I gave you all those impressive stats, the reality is only 0.2% of payments in the world are made with stablecoins. So we still have a lot of room left to go. Same is true, by the way, on Bitcoin. And those of us who have been watching Bitcoin and investing in Bitcoin for a long time, like we have, we look at the Bitcoin space and we think right now it clearly has product market fit as a store of value. Now, will that ever morph? Will things like the Lightning network on top of Bitcoin also play in the same world as stablecoins? Maybe. But what I will tell you right now is Bitcoin is seeing some real institutional adoption. And here's the statistic I was going to give your audience. In traditional asset classes, you've got traditionally about 80% of other asset classes are held by institutions and 20% are held by retail. And in Bitcoin today, we think it's still so early because the institutions are still just at the beginning of coming in, to the point that Bitcoin, only 10% of the world's Bitcoin is held by institutions. So really, it's very much flipped from other asset classes, and we're starting to see that change. Now, why are we starting to see that change? Things like the Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs were approved. It's just another signal that this is not going away. Another imprimatur. I know there are plenty in the crypto community who don't need government imprimaturs, but guess what? Institutions do. And so when you have things like the Bitcoin ETF approved, what was it, a year and a half ago? And Andrew, you remember I said ETFs will be approved, and it was very unpopular at the time. People said, you're crazy, they're never going to be approved post FTX. But we saw that DC Circuit opinion unanimously, most liberal judge, most conservative judge, join together and say, really leave the SEC no path but to.
So Katie, given that you've been right about the predictions thus far, we're at about $105,000 on Bitcoin. You want to call it? Make it easy. Not easy, but I'll give you a lot of time. 3 years from now, 36 months from now.
Andrew, you know I'm never going to do that. The former prosecutor and me would never. I think it would be totally irresponsible of me to do that because
Katie,
we see the volatility.
I got to try.
If Bitcoin becomes stable, why do we need a stable coin? Does everything a stable coin does?
Joe, that is absolutely a first-class problem for the crypto industry. And we have dollars out in the world. We have euros out in the world. We have credit cards in the world. We have countless payment apps out in the world. And you know what? A lot of them are pretty big. We're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars of disruption coming, both via Bitcoin and
based on fiat. You said it. Based on fiat. It's like, ooh. You've got the answer right staring you right in the face.
I'm not a Bitcoin maxi. I'm a crypto maxi.
Okay.
I believe in systems.
I'm willing to. I don't know if I know what I'm talking about. Anyway, Katie.
But Katie does. Katie Haun, great to see you. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you guys for having me.
Again.
Great to see you. Bye-bye.
You would never say that, would you?
What?
Just said I don't know what I'm talking about.
I don't know what I'm talking about at all.
Okay.
You know that.
Okay. As long as we both know, neither one of us know it. We got that. Got that in common.
We got that in common.
Coming up, Tessa.